You're listening to the 4-Phase Cycle Podcast with your hosts, Dr. Alex and Megan of Zesty Ginger. If you're looking to naturally balance hormones and learn how to work with your body instead of against it, you've definitely come to the right place. As a duo of an integrative MD and a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner and best friends, we use the 4 phases of the female cycle in combination with functional lab work and mindset practices to transform the lives of the women we work with.
We also have a whole lot of fun along the way. If you're new around here, it's best to start with season 1 before jumping around and plan to roll up your sleeves. Showing up for ourselves and enjoying our lives is what good health is all about. Just a quick reminder though, this information is not intended to diagnose, manage, or treat disease. Always consult with your doctor before making changes.
Hello, lovely ladies. Megan here, co-founder of Zesty Ginger, and I am super excited about today's topic. We are going to dig into what I believe is incredibly important to understanding your reactions to people around you, other people's reactions to you, and then therefore, whether you believe you are safe in the world, your level of perceived stress, which then directly affects your adrenal health, your hormone health, your cycle, and... Hey there, lovely friends. Do you ever feel like you seem to emotionally go to a similar place over and over and over? Sometimes you feel like you aren't even in control of this reaction, or you watch how other people react to something and you can't understand why in the world they react that way. Today, we are going to explain, we being me, is going to explain a framework to completely change how you perceive and how I was reacting to things that I did myself, and also understanding how other people are acting and reacting in your life. I am Megan, co-founder of Zesty Ginger, and today I want to share this amazing framework and tool with you that's really changed how I perceive my world. So our ability to understand the reactions of other people can allow you to change your perceived stress. Perceived stress is one of the top 4 reasons for adrenal dysfunction. That's right. How much stress you believe you have, not how much you actually have, but what you perceive can make or break whether you are adrenally supported or burnt out, whether you have spotting and cramping and a horrible cycle, or whether things are flowing really well. So speaking of flowing, let's get into today's topic, which is the topic of control dramas. There's an old saying that goes, where attention goes, energy flows. So when psychological domination is used to get energy, bear with me, you'll understand this by the end very, very clearly, from another person. So we're using different tools to get energy from another person. You'll kind of feel like, oh, I won that argument, or I won that energy exchange. And you might not know that's what you're doing, but it can leave you feeling, off center or anxious or drained. If you're around certain people and after the conversation you feel like that, or even going into a conversation with them, or something changing with you, then you know what I'm talking about. So this is based on the concept that every person has an energy field around them, and they all have a set of assumptions and beliefs that are coming outward from them and influencing their world. This is including what we believe about an individual things, like how other people are, and then how kind of we win in conversation, right? So this is a unique set of assumptions, set of a style or an interaction with the author of the book Celestine Prophecy. This is where I learned about control dramas. He calls control dramas, and they can go from really passive to really aggressive. So here are the 4 we're going to talk through today that he shares in his book. And keep in mind that these are really unconscious. So these are not things people are doing on purpose, knowingly to manipulate. These are tools that they've learned usually from early on in childhood. depending on how much the intensity of your parents or your caregiver or your teacher's control drama, then that will show how you react and how strong yours is. A lot of times we develop the opposite one of them, and you'll see as I go through them. So as I'm reading, you can think about yourself. What control drama do I lean towards? We use different things in different situations, or about the people that you're around the most. What do they use? And this is really more for self-discovery so that you can understand why certain interactions are happening. Or for me, why do I say or do certain things? So the verse we're going to talk about is called The Poor Me. So this is the most passive. This is a victim strategy. The world is a place where people can't be counted on. That would be a belief. Too scary to risk pursuing your needs directly. So instead of competing for energy directly, this person will seek to win attention and energy through the manipulation of sympathy. So you can tell you're around a poor me when you feel drawn into a conversation that pulls you off center. You might start to feel guilty out of nowhere. I thought you would have called me by now. All these bad things happened and you weren't there. Those are signs of a poor me. Those are the kinds of things that you would hear. So the strategy here is kind of and I say strategy, this is not knowingly, but what happens is it gets thrown off balance, kind of win our energy by creating that guilt or that doubt. And when we have that guilt, we kind of stop and we're looking through that person's eyes. And when we're in that place of trying to understand that person, they can feel our energy. They get an energy boost. So unfortunately, often the same kind of people that the poor me fear, the reason that they're in this poor me is because of this deep fear, are also the ones that they attract into their lives. And then they're caught in a vicious trap, which is self-validating. See, this always happens. I don't know how many of you know people like this, but I have a good friend who I've watched this happen with. The sweetest human on earth keeps attracting certain situations, and now seeing it from this standpoint, you can kind of understand why. So dealing with a poor me. The fastest way to break this control drama, we're all talking about energy exchange. So if you give the poor me energy and focus when they talk, this is what they're looking for, right? This is active listening. This is the simplest thing. Because often we feel that guilt and we want to put up a wall of I didn't do anything wrong, right? And by doing that, that's when they pull you in more with the guilt. But just by actively listening and being that does sound horrible, right? Just the name of the game is just continually and actively listening, repeating back what they said, and it kind of will get old for them. They won't be getting that same energy. So with all control dramas, the name of the game is making the control drama the topic of conversation, kind of calling it out. You don't have to do it really directly, but you could say, right now I'm feeling that you think I should feel guilty. And even just saying it outwardly is going to change that interaction. So that's number one. That's the poor me. And I'll be honest, poor me is where I fall the most before I understood these control dramas. The next one is the aloof. The lovely aloof. This is my husband. So this is slightly less passive than the poor me. You're around and aloof when you can't get a straight freaking answer. And I know what this is like. Distant, detached, cryptic in response. You sense that you have to kind of ask follow-up questions for even the simplest of information. You're maybe they're yeah, I traveled around a bit. Well, where did you travel? Many places, right? Not giving you just this vague, this mysterious aura. And this is forcing us to pour energy into digging into getting more information that would normally be shared in just the most casual manner. So some people are being really vague. Some people are actually being vague for a reason, like privacy of a situation, but other people are, they don't know it, but they're using aloof as a strategy. So if we assume the person just doesn't want to talk to us and we focus our attention elsewhere, often that person will come back to interact because they weren't getting the energy exchange that they wanted. Often aloof could not share freely as a child because it was threatening or dangerous, so they adopted this strategy as a protective mechanism, and usually the aloof kind of believes the world is full of people who can't be trusted with intimate information. So dealing with the aloof, same thing. Sending love is the name of the game. So continually being there for that person and just kind of allowing them to be in their control drama and allowing them to feel safe. This person is only doing that out of safety for themselves. They're not doing it to be mean to you. All right, number 3, the interrogator. So more aggressive, this is more pervasive in modern society. The manipulation strategy here uses criticism to gain energy from others. If you're around an interrogator, you'll feel that you're being monitored or watched. May feel, in this case, in the role of someone, you may feel inadequate or unable to handle our own lives because they've pulled us into a reality where we feel that most people are making huge mistakes with their lives and must correct the situation. So it might be, I've noticed that you don't keep your house very neat, right? There's this little underlying thing there. Okay. Or how you do your job, how you talk, personal characteristics. These are things that could kind of feel attacked. So the unconscious strategy here is hoping that we buy into their criticism and then adopt the interrogator's view. So that's giving them energy. So if we're like, I really am questioning if I am a good person. I am really questioning if I should be doing my job differently. I know someone like this, and I do every time I'm around them, I actually question myself. I'll be like, am I a good parent? I'm like, why do I always end up questioning myself around this person? And now I understand. Because the comments and the things aren't always that clear, and they don't even necessarily know they're doing it, right? So it's just this play of energy. So they believe the world is not safe and orderly unless he or she is watching the behavior and making corrections of your behavior, other people's behavior. And this will often come from a family where parental figures were absent and not attentive to needs. In this insecure void of energy, it's gained by pointing out errors and criticizing the family. So that's how we got there. Dealing with the interrogator, so again, staying centered enough to tell them how you're feeling in their presence. Keeping from being defensive, sending loving energy. I know that's like a vague thing to say, but basically, can you be in a place where you're not physically drawing in? You're like, okay, I know what's happening. Being present, staying in this energy. As you explain, you feel monitored and criticized, and then they may argue that the criticism is valid, so just be prepared for that. And they actually may deny being critical and may kind of turn the tables around and call you critical. So you have to consider, is this true? Like you never really know. Are you being the interrogator? Or are they? Are you, is this valid what they're saying? Like maybe it is just a valid concern and you just don't want to deal with the fact that you're horrible at your job or something, right? So you do have to look at it, but if you feel really strong in your opinion, then you might just be dealing with an interrogator who doesn't even know it. Okay, number 4. This is the most aggressive. This is the intimidator. So if you feel drained or uncomfortable in somebody's presence or unsafe, perhaps even in danger, then you may be around an intimidator. So they will do or say things or suggest anything that they may just erupt into rage or violence at any moment. They may tell stories this is extreme, right, of like harming others or show their anger by breaking things. So this person, depending on the extreme of where it is, they're really winning attention by creating an environment where we feel so threatened that all focus is on this person. They feel dangerous. You're not going to let them out of your sight, so that you're constantly giving them energy. They have your attention and focus. In a conversation with somebody like this, usually deferring, quickly their opinion, and they get the boost of energy, right? So they know that most of the time you're not going to fight with them because you're like, I don't want to fight with you. You're going to freak out. So you're like, yeah, you're right. So they're getting a boost from that of just being like, here you go. This is usually developed in a past environment of severe deprivation of love and energy, right? So it's most involving a relationship with another intimidator who was dominating, abusive, and no other strategy worked. So they might at first have gone to a poor me, but nobody cares. If you're dealing with an intimidator, they're like, yeah, poor you, I don't really care, right? Like, I'm gonna beat people up. If they were aloof, and you're around an intimidator, nobody's noticing and aloof, right? They're like, you don't even exist to me. So interrogating, right, like asking all these interrogating questions would have been met with a lot of anger and hostility to an intimidator. So often they will end up using the intimidator themselves, and they're like, well, this person is this intense, I'm going to go to a 10 to match, to feel safe. So the world for an intimidator is one of random violence and hostility. This is not a good place to be. Supreme isolation. They feel everyone rejects them, no one cares, and that just brings more and more of that into their life, right? They believe no one cares about me, everyone rejects me, and then they're really aggressive because that's about their belief, and then the people are like, you're really aggressive, I don't want to be around you. So that's how these energy cycles continue. So dealing with an intimidator, this can be tricky because confronting them is a special case. There could be obvious actual danger. So it's really better to remove oneself. If you're in a long-term relationship with an intimidator, it's really better to put the situation in the hands of a professional. Making them feel safe, giving them support, bringing the reality of their drama into awareness, in the hands of a professional, like where you are safe. And a lot of these are the people that end up in the criminal justice system. Of course, there's always going to be a varying degree. All right, so those are the 4. I'm sure as you're listening, as I was, you're like, what do I do? What scenarios do I use that? Who else do I interact with? And just knowing that makes being around other people and interactions between people, you're starting to realize like, oh, that's why that person always goes that way. They're going into the poor me. And that's why when they go into the poor me, I feel so annoyed by it. Like, why do I feel so annoyed by them being sad about themselves? Because you can tell you're being manipulated, right? And that's when we push back. But really, if we can just sit and listen and be an active listening ear, they might stop that control drama, right? If it's no longer being fed by energy. But usually our ego kicks in and we're like, I'm not feeding into that. I know what you're doing. So it's just really helpful to be aware of, because I had a situation with my husband where I actually feel like we were in an argument or in a situation, and I felt like I was watching the situation from above, and I was aware of like this control drama thing going on. I wasn't really able to stop it. I was able to change a little bit, but after I was like, wow, that was such a clear control drama, and I could tell from how I felt about certain things whether I felt like kind of I won the energy or not, and whether, it worked what my control drama was. I live in a lovely jet pathway, and I know there have been a ton throughout this recording, so bear with me. We'll dance every time there's jets. Take a deep breath. Okay, here's the example with my husband. So, my husband was having a drink, an alcoholic drink, and he has a history with alcohol, and he has been to rehab, and he, in general, is not drinking. So, I was like, okay, how are we dealing with this? Sometimes he does, and it's okay. Sometimes he does, and it's not okay. So, I immediately kind of snapped into interrogator mode, which I noticed kind of afterwards and almost immediately, like as he responded. I'm like, what are you doing? And I was using some skills, some of my therapist skills. I was like, well, what are you trying to feel right now? Like, what are you using this for? Like, what is this good idea? I tried. I was like, this tastes really strong. Like, I was just kind of pretending. I mean, I really thought I was, but I was just asking these questions that were like, why don't we really think about our choices? But it was I was interrogating, because his reaction was that of an opposite control drama, because he felt I was interrogating, even though in my head at the time, at first I was like, no, I'm just asking questions. These are just questions I'm asking, and he should think about it. So he went to the aloof. And he just was kind of like, yeah, you're right. I don't really need this. And he just kind of like poured the whole drink down the drain. He just kind of was like, you're right. I don't need this. And so it was interesting because, you would think that was what I was trying to get him to do. I was trying to get him to feel guilty so he would get rid of the drink. But I immediately felt worse when he did that. And that's what got me thinking about the control drama. Because he went to aloof and he just was like, yeah, you're right, I'll do what you want. And I knew that wasn't really how he felt. So I knew it was also a control drama. And I immediately felt like my energy was drained. And later on, he did admit that he felt very attacked, like his freedom was being taken. So I was definitely on point with, feeling that energy shift had happened. And so I could feel myself in that moment really wanting to, I'm going to call it, get the energy back. I was like, I wanted to be mean. So I guess I decided to go to the intimidator. I'm kind of a low-level intimidator. I don't get very angry at all, but I remember feeling like right now I want to pick a fight. Like I want to somehow make him respond back because I just felt like he had just kind of put his hands up, but it didn't feel like I had really won. It felt like it was a manipulation, or I don't know, I just didn't feel right about it. And I recognized that in the past that I would have picked a fight right then. And I would have just, said something to be mean, said something to get under his skin so that then he would be the intimidator back at me. And then I would go to the poor me, because that's our cycle. I push and push and push, and I instigate and I interrogate until he finally kind of breaks. And again, his intimidator's not that intense either, but it's just like saying something mean or just being like, or like kind of saying something loud or yelling. And then I would go cry. And usually when I would end up in the poor me is when most of our fights would end. So what was interesting is I could really feel this disconnect and in between what Nate was saying in his body language, because we were in a place, when this situation happened, when we were really working on things. So we had both vowed to not just go to those control dramas and let it go. Like we normally would have just gone in other rooms and gone to bed and just, let it go, let it pass. But we decided to really talk through what was going on. And in the process, we kind of sat there and we're going through this analytical circle of what one person said, what the other person said. And we could get to a conclusion that would make sense. He'd be like, yeah, you're right. I shouldn't do that in the future or whatever. But neither of us felt better, right? So we kept getting into this circle. And each time we got to that point, I was so uncomfortable sitting with this feeling. I just wanted to literally crawl out of my skin. So I've never let myself go to this place without creating another control drama to exit, without crying so hard that just kind of he's like, oh gosh, you're a mess, I'll come help you, or getting so mad that we just stopped, or walking away and not talking about it. But we were both committed to sitting there and continually. And I noticed how uncomfortable it was to watch that I wasn't bringing up a control drama. And it felt like there was no flow of energy, but we weren't really getting anywhere. And eventually he said to me, what do you need? And I started to realize, I was like, we are never going to get out of this circle unless we change our physical state and our energy, because intellectually we're talking through it. We're never going to get out of this circle. We're never going to get out of the control drama unless something changes. And I said, I think I need a hug. And this is not something I would normally say. Way too stubborn to say stuff like that. And he paused and he didn't want to do it either. It was the same thing. I've always been in these control dramas. He was just as stubborn. He didn't want to do it. And we went in another circle a couple times around of talking. Eventually he went back and he's like, well, what do you need? Or what do you think we should do? And I was like, I still think I need a hug. And eventually that time he actually was like, okay. And so he came and gave me a hug, and it was everything melted away. We completely changed our physical state, and it opened us to actually communicate at a different level. And it was we stepped out of the control drama for the first time ever from knowing what we're in and trying to get out. And it was just a super, super cool experience, and shows, Einstein's quote. It's like, you can't get out of a problem from the same state of consciousness that you created it. And if you're in this intellectual back and forth and this energy flow back and forth with control dramas, you're never going to get out of that unless you're able to somehow change your state. Step out of it. Can you laugh? Can you hug? Can you move? Can you do something to actually physically change your state so that you and the person that you're dealing with can see it from a different perspective? So I hope me sharing kind of how I watched us go through control dramas and you hearing how they all work will help you to think, okay, what do I do in certain situations? And is that a poor me, right? Am I looking for energy? And then starting to monitor how you react to people, and it will change your perception of stress. It will change your perception of why other people do different things, because I think the hardest thing for us is usually to understand, why the heck would somebody do something that mean? Because that feels personal. But once you start to see this person was treated this way as a child, and this is the method that they use to protect themselves, you will start to recognize that we are really all the same. Nobody's out there to hurt you. We're all actively trying to protect ourselves. And then maybe you can see that person with a little bit more compassion, and maybe then they can start to see their control drama, and all the perceived stress will go down. Your adrenal health will be amazing. Your hormones and your cycles and your neurotransmitters are all going to come back on board, and you're going to say, yes, this was the tool I was missing. We'd love to hear what you think of this. We'd love to hear which one you think you are or how this relates to you. So please share. Thank you so much for listening.
Thanks for coming out to hang with us on the podcast. It is our goal to transform the way women are treated in healthcare. And we need your help. We need your help to get the word out. We have a lofty goal of 1 million downloads. And we know that as this podcast grows, we're going to be able to reach more women, get more amazing speakers for you, and bring the most cutting-edge information.
If you found these podclasses helpful, please take a moment to text 5 women you know the link to the series. We appreciate your help so much. Can't wait to see you next time.